Finley to throw. Over the middle, intercepted. Wolford again. Wolford the other way at the 30, the 40. Wolford to midfield. Miles Wolford with the pick. The Heels on the doorstep of an enormous victory. Williams is the running back next to Howe. Play action. Howe will now lob it down the near side. Newsom with a man all over him. Pins the ball against the back of the defender and brings it in. Heels can get a first down at the 3. Now, pump fake to the right. Now he's going to run to the left. Howe at the 5. Takes the shot. Pinballing off the Canes for the touchdown. Howe showing the toughness for 6.
Cardinals down 4, 35-31. May has the shotgun snap. Pressure coming. Rolls to the right.
Throws to the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Antoine Green! 16 seconds to go. No flag.
Snapping it off the 8-yard line. May pulls it, tries to roll it apart.
Now he's going to throw it and score! Christian May throws it to Payson in the end zone for the touchdown! They are throwing this left-handed. Was rolling out on the run and threw it left-handed. Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading in with Barshot. Theo at the 35. Theo, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Theo into the Cajun for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
What's going on, guys? Welcome into another edition of the Heel Tough Blog podcast, coming at you on a Sunday night, talking a little bit of Tar Heel football, and you know what that means. If we're coming at you on a Sunday night like this at 9 o'clock at night, it means there has to be some sort of breaking news on the Tar Heel football front. And so we got to get into Carolina bringing in a new quarterback for this 2026 roster. That was not expected by any stretch of the imagination, but they do go out and get another guy for this quarterback room, a late addition that will be here in the summer, we believe. And so what does this mean for Carolina? What does this ultimately mean for that quarterback room? We'll talk about that. Carolina with 2 players that were expected to enroll in January and are now potentially not expected to enroll. One player for sure is not expected to enroll at all. There's another player that is now looking to hopefully work his way towards enrolling in the fall with the team. And then there are 2 other guys that were expected to enroll in the winter that are now not doing that either and are going to wait until the summer to enroll with the program. So find out all about that, our thoughts on what exactly is going on there. And then a few closing notes on the way out. Of course, got to pay a little tribute to James Sperling on today, the day of his celebration of life that took place inside of Carmichael. So we'll tell you more about that here at the end of the podcast. But as I said, let's start with the news of Taron Dickens, the transfer out of Western Carolina, signing on with the Tar Heels. That news came down earlier this morning from Pete Nakos of On 3 Sports. And, a little bit of a shock that this was something that we did not have any sort of intel on. There was no sort of trend from Carolina that they were hosting him on campus or anything like that. This is a guy that it feels like Carolina just identified, and they're going to bring in blindly out of the transfer portal. He transfers in from Western Carolina, where he finished with 5,063 yards, 51 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions through the air on 74% completions, while also running for 371 yards and 3 touchdowns on 161 career carries. This past season, he threw for 3,508 yards, 38 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions on 74.2% completions through the air, and also ran for 321 yards and a touchdown on 97 carries on the ground. Did so in just 9 games. The reason why he only played in 9 games was because he missed the first 3 games of the season due to an academic violation. And so there's a lot of different things that you can take away from this. Carolina with a guy that was as accurate as really any quarterback out there for most of the season. You go back to his game against Wofford earlier this year. He set the record, the NCAA record for most completions to start a game at 46. He also set the NCAA record for the most straight completions with 50 dating back to his previous game. He finished that game 53 of 56 for 378 yards and 3 touchdowns against Wofford. That was, kind of what you saw from him. A guy that put in a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns, didn't really turn the ball over a whole lot. And now he's getting ready to be a part of Carolina's quarterback room. So, I mean, when you saw this news first come down, what were your first thoughts, Josh Marlowe, about Carolina picking up another quarterback out of the transfer portal, but doing so after the enrollment period so that he would be able to be with the team in the spring?
Well, I probably found out a different way than you did or most Carolina fans did. I woke up very late on Sunday morning, as I'm apt to do during this time of the year when it's not football season. Had a text from our good buddy Evan Smoke Ludwig over at WFNZ with the news and a bunch of F words and a text message afterwards, because Smoke is a big-time Western Carolina football fan. And if you're wondering, yes, that is an actual real thing. And so he was pretty upset that his quarterback was transferring out of their program to come play for Carolina. But the first thing that I thought, and this is really my most prevailing thought, it's just really odd timing. And when you say there was no track record, there was no evidence that this was even on the periphery. I mean, that's how it was. Like, if we would have known about this, we would have recorded a podcast earlier in the week about Carolina looking to maybe add another quarterback to the quarterback room for the upcoming year. But that was not the case. And so when I was sitting here on Sunday, February 15th, I thought, well, that's really odd timing to add someone to the roster this late in the portal. Not that you're not still seeing guys be added, but just considering that Carolina has already brought in 2 other transfers. You're bringing in a pretty high-profile prospect in Trevor Burgess. Just felt like that room was rather complete. When you look at the player and you look at the production, can you argue with it? No, you're talking about a guy that was very efficient, threw for a lot of yards, threw for a high completion percentage, and did not turn the football over. And from a playing style, could be a natural fit in Bobby Petrino's offense, which we expect to be a lot more explosive, a lot more high octane than what you saw last year under Freddie Kitchens. The concern is the size. He's 5'11", so he's tiny, and he's having to make the jump from the FCS level to, Power 4 conference football at the Division I level. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see, because on the surface, a guy with that production you don't think would be transferring up a level to just be a backup, which leads you to believe what's going on in that quarterback room that had Carolina open to basically add a 4th quarterback to the roster for the upcoming year, and this one being their 3rd transfer. It's going to make for a very interesting development as we get into spring ball and as we head closer and closer to the start of the upcoming season.
Yeah, I mean, look, it could mean nothing. It could mean that Carolina is just looking for, a guy, or just saw a guy out there that was so productive that there was no way they could pass up on him. It could mean something. It could mean that, the guys that are in that room are already struggling. It could mean there's some other stuff that could be going on, potentially off the field or something like that Carolina says, hey, we need to get someone else in this room just to make sure that we're ready to go. I would lean probably the prior rather than the latter on that one. I think it's just a guy that's so productive that maybe there were some debates about whether or not they should bring him in. And it got to a point where he was still out there, and they said, you know what? He's still out there. we still don't know 100% that, we have our quarterback in this room. And so let's go out and get somebody and let's just see what ends up happening this upcoming season. I think that's not the way to go about this, because you still need somebody in that quarterback room to step up and be the starting quarterback. And do I think that Taron Dickens has the capability to be that? Yes. I mean, look, there are some people that were pushing back. I mean, I had some guy that said earlier that this dude won't play a single snap because he's 5'11". Well, he played snaps at the FCS level and was pretty successful. I mean, not just pretty successful, very successful. As I said earlier, he has a 51-5 touchdown interception ratio. So this is a guy whose size hasn't really bothered him. I mean, I think it's going to be interesting, and I got to watch more film of him to really figure out what exactly, what type of player Carolina is getting. Is this a guy that's really going to air it out down the field a lot? I don't know if that's necessarily the type of guy that you're getting here. I think this is a guy that's probably going to stick to throwing the football more, close to the line of scrimmage. I mean, you look at 2024, his average depth of target was 8.4 yards, which is actually very similar to that of Billy Edwards Jr. When you look back at his year in 2024 at Maryland. You go to 2025, though, his average depth of target was 10 yards per. So, I mean, yeah, this is an area where I think Carolina, probably feels like they've got a chance here. Taking a risk on a guy like that, that could end up being pretty successful. I mean, you look at his, passing grades from Pro Football Focus. I mean, he graded out as one of the top passers in all of college football this past year at a 91.3. So that's certainly something that I think is encouraging for Carolina coming in. And yeah, he doesn't turn the football over through the air. One thing that they will have to be aware of is that he does have some fumble issues. That has been something that has popped up. So definitely have to be aware of that, going into this season. Hopefully that's something that he can clean up. But, when you look at this, ultimately, I mean, the most important question that I think most people have, and it's probably the most important question that you have to ask here, is where do you think he factors into the race for QB1? Do you think he's actually a legitimate threat to be the starting quarterback? Because I think based off of those numbers, it's going to be hard not to have him as a legitimate threat to be the starting quarterback.
Yeah, I don't think he came here to hold a clipboard. I don't think he came here. I mean, unless his lifelong dream was to play at North Carolina, but not care about his role. No, I think he's coming in to compete. And if you go back to our conversations we had back when Carolina, landed Billy Edwards Jr. out of Wisconsin, they landed old Miles McNeil out of Texas A&M. It wasn't like Carolina did in the portal what we wanted them to, what we thought they could have done in terms of adding a legitimate quarterback to the roster. Because I was of the opinion when Bobby Petrino got hired, if you wanted to run it back with Gio Lopez, I was very open to that because I thought Gio Lopez, would be a much more natural fit in the offense. We were all high on Travis Burgess entering the program, but coming off the ACL injury, I think the staff is going to redshirt him. Bigger chance he plays for starting or competes for playing time in 2027. So I'm of the opinion that this is going to be a 3-quarterback race. This is going to be a 3-quarterback battle, and we'll have to find out to see who does emerge as Carolina's signal caller. I do think, just from the limited action that I've seen of him, because I've been texted highlights of what he was doing when he was competing at the FCS level. I think what stands out to Belichick is the efficiency, the high level completion percentage, and the ability to throw for a ton of yards, a ton of touchdowns, and not throw interceptions. You did mention the fumbles, but again, that's something that could be corrected, and I think in a much more easier fashion than is he a bad decision maker? That answer is no. Like you don't throw for the yards, the touchdowns, without being able to really process at the level that even at the FCS level he's done, because FCS football has gotten a lot better in recent years. So yeah, I think he's here to compete, and I think he's going to be here to really push for a starting role. And I'm not against that. It's just very odd that this happened on February 15th as opposed to January 15th or whenever. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how spring unfolds and develops and what we're able to gather about Carolina's quarterback race, because with the way that the schedule is laid out next year, of course, you start the year over in Dublin. And of course, you play Clemson early, play Miami in the first half of the year, on and on and on. We can all agree Carolina is going to need much more adequate quarterback play than what they got a year ago. And I guess to their credit, they've got a handful of options to find out just who that guy is that can play the level of football we're going to need them to play if this team has any hopes and dreams of going to a bowl game in year 2 under Bill Belichick.
It just gives you an extra arrow in your quarterback satchel or whatever you hold arrows in. I think that's what you were hoping for, was that, hey, man, you could get another guy in here that maybe, could end up being the starter for you. I think he's definitely going to be in that battle for QB1. You don't put up those types of numbers at the FCS level. And as you said, one of the things that you can tell even before watching a ton of his film, and I watched a little bit of his film earlier today, but a really strong processor, a guy that just reads the field very well. He knows the plays that he can make, and he knows the plays that he can't make. And I think that's something that you really like to see from him. But, at the same time, it's not like, yes, he's taking care of the football, but he's not limiting himself. You throw 38 touchdowns in a season. That shows you're pretty damn good. You're taking some risks even still. But, the 2 interceptions, I think that's the thing that you like the most, is that he is just doing a great job of making sure that he doesn't throw into the tight windows. And if he is throwing into tight windows, he's making those throws consistently. So I'm going to take the next few days to learn a little bit more about him, really get a feel for whether or not I feel like he should be QB1. But I do think that you've got 2 quarterbacks that are going to be ready to battle him in Billy Edwards Jr. and Miles O'Neill. And that's the thing, is that Carolina is going to have at least 3 guys that are ready to battle for that job. And then you could have a 4th that could be ready if you get, if you get a healthy Travis Burgess and you really want to turn to him at some point. He could be in the battle once you get into the regular season. And if you need another quarterback to step up off the bench for you, I think that's what's different than last year's group. Last year's group of quarterbacks, it came down to eventually Gio Lopez is our guy. That's the only guy that we can ride with. Now, maybe you should have rode with Max Johnson at certain points in the season. I don't really think it would have made that much of a difference, judging off of what Max Johnson was doing and the fact that you had Freddie Kitchens as your offensive coordinator. But I feel like this year you've got multiple guys that you can turn to. You've got guys that have experience in Edwards Jr. and Dickens. You've got guys that have the upside in Miles O'Neill and Travis Burgess. Also, Arturi Newkirk can factor in there as well if need be. So you've got all these different guys that I think give you an opportunity to be more competitive at that quarterback spot. It's just about the staff. If one guy really struggles, then you've got to be willing to turn to somebody else in this quarterback room. It'll be interesting to see whether or not Bobby Petrino and his staff are able to do that. All right, let's turn our attention to the 2 players that were expected to enroll in January and are not expected to enroll now potentially at all. One of them, it is basically for sure. All these reports, by the way, coming from inside Carolina's Don Callahan, who does a great job of covering the program. He said this was on Thursday that North Carolina did not enroll all of their expected 2026 recruiting class early enrollees. The two guys that right now they are mainly focused on are former 4-star wide receiver Keon Chapman and former high-end 3-star offensive lineman Taron Parks, who did not enroll in January. Parks is not expected to enroll at UNC this offseason. The reasoning at this point is unknown. Contrary to the above sources, they say in this report that they released the other day, a source close to the program has clarified that Chapman is working towards enrolling by the fall. And so we'll see whether or not he's able to get enrolled. But Taron Parks, a high-end 3-star interior offensive lineman, one of the best when you looked at the offensive line and you looked at the areas of need for Carolina, that is certainly an area of need. Looked like he was going to be maybe the guy in this freshman class with the best chance to play early this year because of the need at those guard spots for Carolina. So this is a pretty tough blow for Carolina. I mean, you lose one of your most talented overall prospects in Keon Chapman, a guy who really looked like he could be the future of the Tar Heels wide receiving core, and then Taron Parks as well. So Carolina going to have to really work around some of those losses and try to figure out how to replace these guys. Some of it will be in the 2027 class, but for this year's roster, especially with Parks, going to be a tough pill to swallow for Carolina.
Yeah, it was something that when I saw that tweet come down, I think was it Wednesday or was it Thursday afternoon, or maybe it was even Friday. I'm not exactly remember when it was known. Just kind of an eyebrow raiser, and said, "Oh, wasn't expecting to see that. Was not prepared to see that." And for whatever reason, right? It just feels like for Bill Belichick and the staff, there's always just something going on around the program, right? Like it just whether it's his girlfriend showing up to the Duke Carolina game wearing a T-shirt, whether it's him not going into the Hall of Fame, and there being some negative backlash about that. There always just seems to be some sort of noise. And it's not a good thing. You just want to be able to get kind of in a rhythm of the staff, recruiting, working the portal, high school stuff, getting ready for the season, on and on and on. But, here it is. You've got two guys that you were preparing to probably have some sort of a role for this year. You look at Parks having maybe the bigger role of the two, and here they are not enrolled as you're preparing for spring practice, which is not too far away. So it'll be interesting to see how they ultimately navigate that. But again, it was probably some news that even, if we're sitting here with an eyebrow raised and we're like, well, probably weren't expecting that. Probably the same thing for a coaching staff. For whatever reason, man, there just always seems to be some sort of negative energy around this program since Belichick got hired some 14 months ago.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it's really not good any way that you cut it when you don't have guys that were expected to enroll with you and don't enroll and look like they're not going to. With Parks, I mean, yeah, it's been confirmed that he's not going to enroll this offseason. I mean, that's a huge blow for Carolina. And with Chapman, you're going to have to wait until the fall. And I mean, waiting until the fall, that means that you can't even get him in here in the summer. He's going to be a guy that joins the program right before the season starts, if he does. And then he's going to have to get caught up on everything. The thing about it is it really makes you wonder, Carolina, we've heard that, some of the academic standards have potentially gone down a little bit to, try to put out the best roster for football. That was one of the things that we heard when Bill Belichick took over. And you wonder if that's starting to show through here, where they're taking on guys that they think will qualify academically, but then turn out that they don't. Now, again, we don't know that that's for sure, But I mean, yeah, you have this situation. One thing that we should have talked about a little bit more with Taron Dickens, everything is good on the field that you've seen from him. Problem is that he had that academic violation last year that caused him to miss 3 games. If he's running into those issues at Western Carolina, is he going to be able to uphold the standard that you have to have at Carolina to be able to get on the field? That's going to be something that's going to be interesting as well. And so it really does make people worry about that kind of stuff. And I could see why. If you're Carolina, you want to keep that high academic standard that you've had, that you've built this program around. And so hopefully this is something that Carolina is able to get smoothed out. Hopefully these are guys that are able to work their tails off in the classroom. And, for a guy like Keon Chapman, maybe he does end up enrolling this fall with the program. Maybe you find a way to get Daron Parks enrolled with the program somehow along the way. 2 other notes here that I have on this. Jimmy Suliafau and Dream Rashad both have yet to enroll with the program either, after being expected to enroll in January, but both of those guys are expected to now enroll in the summer. So Carolina, maybe they were just guys that said, look, I want to stay in school and graduate, with my normal graduating class when everybody else does. Maybe they're wanting to play other sports, something like that. They are still expected to enroll in the summer. And then Ashton Blatt, Nick Fiamura, and Zion Smith, they were 3 players that the staff didn't expect to enroll in January, and they are all still expected to enroll in the summer. So overall, when it comes to this issue, especially with the academic stuff, are you worried about the academic standard under Belichick and it becoming, something that could become an issue here for Carolina?
You would certainly hope not, considering, all the jokes that we've had to endure over the past, 10, 15 years after the academic scandal that rocked the entire university, back in the 2010s. But I think it's fair to say that at this rate, if that's something that pops up, would you be surprised? This was one of the first things, I guess you could say, when Mac Brown went vocal when talking about his exit from Carolina and having to address what the university was doing for Belichick. He basically said without saying, had I been able to been given the amount of money he was given and we lower the academic standards, we would have won a lot more football games. That's pretty much what he said. Can we prove that? Obviously not, but that's the way Mac Brown felt. And you gave Belichick everything that he wanted and demanded. You lower the academic standard, you win 4 football games. We're going into year 2. You've got some players that aren't enrolled for whatever reason. You bring in a quarterback that is highly productive but missed 3 games due to an academic issue at Western Carolina. So you don't want that to be something that becomes something that's being associated with Belichick in the program. But right now, that's just factual. Like that's just part of where Carolina is at, how they're trying to operate. So they can win football games. The best way to make this a non-talking point, to put this away, win football games, and when the academic progress reports come out, when you get your team GPA, have good grades, and then it doesn't really matter. We have to wait and really see about the first part, because it felt like Carolina's grades when they put out their stuff back earlier this year, they seem to be in a pretty healthy spot despite lowering the academic standards. So it's my hope that this doesn't become something that we got to go through again, because it would just fuel the NC State fans who have not found a new joke to make in the last 10 to 15 years. But at this rate, I would not be surprised if this is something we're having to talk about on a much more larger scale later during the Belichick tenure.
Yeah, hopefully that isn't the case. That certainly isn't something that we need, but we know that they have already run into some recruiting violations and everything like that. Some violations of game day operations and everything, involving Thaddeus Dixon's family and that situation. So Hopefully that's not something that we have to worry about, but you never know. Okay, a couple closing notes here on the way out. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, James Sperling, they did have the celebration of life for him that took place on Sunday. Many Tar Heel alumni showing out for that one, including former head coaches. Mac Brown was there, as well as Bill Belichick. Not sure if Larry Fedora was there, but I believe he was. He was expressing his condolences on social media after his passing last Thursday. So they celebrated his life for a guy that was incredibly impactful in the Tar Heel football community. The guy that ran basically everything over at Kenan Stadium, the chief of operations over there at Kenan Stadium for more than half a century. And so he was a guy that, so many people have talked about his selflessness, just how good of a guy he was to be around on game days and everything like that. As I said, never got a chance to meet him, unfortunately, but certainly seemed like an upstanding guy and someone that is going to be very, very missed around the Tar Heel community starting this season. I expect they will do some sort of either moment of silence, some recognition for him during the first home game of the season for Carolina this upcoming year against East Tennessee State. But we'll just have to wait and see. But great to see that they had the celebration of life for him and that so many people turned out to Carmichael Arena earlier today. Meanwhile, Drake May and the Patriots fall in the Super Bowl. Of course, we were getting you guys prepared leading up to that. That was last Sunday. The Patriots didn't put up much of a fight in the game. The offensive line for Drake, not great. His wide receivers struggled to create separation. He did not have a great night himself, though, and so the Patriots fall 29-13 in the Super Bowl. Congratulations to former Tar Heel Chaz Surratt. He is a Super Bowl champion this year, so congratulations to him. I know that's got to be a real cool moment for not only the Carolina community, but especially the Denver, North Carolina community up there, East Lincoln High School, where he played his high school football. They have to be celebrating that. So a really cool moment for him, but heartbreak for Drake and the Patriots. Hopefully one day Drake can get himself back to the Super Bowl. And then two Tar Heels announced that they are headed for two Tar Heels announced to be headed for the Combine in Indianapolis. That would be Thaddeus Dixon and Marcus Allen. Those are the two guys that seem like they have the best chance of being drafted. Really, everybody else, it seems like an outside shot. I know Pro Football Focus feels pretty highly about Daniel King being someone that could maybe not get drafted, but could get picked up as a free agent when it's all said and done. So that'll be a name to monitor, as well as a couple of other names. I know Chad Lindbergh has shown up on some lists way, way down the list. Certainly not a guy that's going to get drafted, but maybe someone that can land on a roster. But it's going to be Thaddeus Dixon with your best chance at getting drafted. Marcus Allen not too far behind him, potentially being an undrafted free agent or maybe sneaking into that 7th round. Really depends on what they do in Indy starting. That's right, next week. It's already the NFL Scouting Combine, and we'll have you covered on all of those fronts, just like we had you covered on the Taron Dickens front, earlier today, and how we had you covered on the two players that were expected to enroll and didn't enroll back in January. We have you covered with all of that stuff on the website. Make sure you go back and read all of those articles for us. We would greatly appreciate that. And any other news that comes out around the program, we will be sure to have that for you. There will be a couple articles coming up here soon. As I said, we're focused on the NFL Scouting Combine. So before they officially go out there, we'll have an article that will tell you all about where they are on some of these draft boards. Definitely, Thaddeus Dixon looking like the best chance of getting drafted, looking like a early to mid day 3 type of pick for Carolina. And then Marcus Allen, we also have his status, plenty of other guys in there as well that are trying to make it to the NFL level. We'll update you on their stock here as the Combine rolls around. And then We will have an article going up here soon about the position rooms that we feel the best about. Find out, did the position room, I'll tell you, we were, when I was planning this article out here recently, I laid out the position rooms that I felt best about. Taron Dickens coming into that quarterback room shores it up just a little bit. Maybe not enough to jump him a significant amount of spots, but it will definitely jump him at least 1 or 2 spots on that list. So make sure that you're keeping an eye out for that article. That'll come out here sometime shortly as well, before we get ready for spring practice for Tar Heel football, where we'll have you covered as much as we can, as much as Bill Belichick wants to give us, the information that he wants to give us, we will have you covered on that front. In the meantime, make sure you guys go over, check out the basketball coverage that we have going on right now, right in the thick of things here in Tar Heel basketball season. We had you covered with the Caleb Wilson injury. Of course, we'll have you covered with anything going on with Henry Vassar as well, if there's any news that comes out about that. And then we are having you covered game to game. Carolina with a crucial game coming up on Tuesday night in Raleigh against the NC State Wolfpack. Make sure you go back and check out the podcast preview of that, which we just did earlier this evening on the Four Corners side of things. And then also make sure that you keep an eye out on game day for the preview that will be ready for you. The recap will be up the next morning, and then we will be back to recap that game on the Four Corners side of things sometime during sometime that night. So make sure that you guys are keeping up with all of that coverage throughout the next couple of months, because we are getting into the crucial time of the year. It's almost March, guys, and that's when we really turn things up to another level covering Carolina basketball. So once again, for the best opinions, for the best news and notes around Tar Heel football and basketball, make sure you head over to HeelToughBlog.com. But that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the podcast tonight. Want to thank Josh for hosting with me. Want to thank you guys for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.